President Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House Friday following a lengthy phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So could an end be in sight to a war that has stretched on now for 3.5 years? Political science professor William Muck from North Central College joins us now for some insight. Good morning to you, Professor.
Good morning.
Okay, so all that pomp and circumstance in Alaska when Putin comes to town ends in no deal. So what is the likelihood that this time around it's going to work?
I think it's pretty low. I think we're sort of on repeat here. What we're likely to see is that Vladimir Putin is going to try to work Donald Trump, try to work the United States to extend the conversation, to keep this going on and on. Ultimately, Putin hasn't really fundamentally shifted his position at all. He still has that same sort of maximalist. He wants a big chunk of Ukraine, doesn't want to give anything up. So I don't think Putin's position has shifted very much. And so he's looking for engagement just to sort of extend the process, but not really get to a ceasefire.
But if you're President Trump, if that is the case, why meet with him again? Because President Trump seems to be a no-nonsense kind of guy. And so it would almost seem like a loss for Trump if he meets with him again and nothing happens.
No, I think that's a concern, right? I think there's two things going on. One, I think Donald Trump really genuinely believes that through these interactions, right? He's somebody who believes in face-to-face stuff, and I think he believes that if he gets people in the room, he can get them to change their position. And I think the other thing is Donald Trump enjoys the attention, right? There's something about these events. They sort of fit within his narrative. He's driving the news cycle. So for even if they're not fully successful, they meet a lot of what Donald Trump likes to do in politics. So now the question is, does he get tired at some point and say, Putin is trying to play me, and then shift more to Ukraine? And we've seen some of that of President Trump, where he's shifting more Ukrainian and then more back and towards the Russian position. So we've seen both of that at play.
I mean, all within a year, because you remember that tense meeting between him and Zelensky and VP Vance at the beginning of the year. I mean, that was hard to watch, and now things have shifted. On Friday, President Trump said that he's now hesitant to sell those U.S.-made Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. How do you think the introduction of that particular weapon would impact the conflict, and does it help maybe understand Putin's motivation for a second summit?
Oh, absolutely, right. I think that is part of the reason that Putin wants to chat, is because Donald Trump appeared to be open to sending these Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, which wouldn't fundamentally alter the battlefield, but it would change the ways in which Ukraine could attack Russia. And Putin was clearly upset about that. So I think that's why he suddenly wants to talk. Let's have a conversation about this. Let's pull the U.S. president in. But yes, I don't think it's going to fundamentally shift the conflict, but it is a big deal. And I think, to your point about Zelensky and Trump, it does sound like this last meeting between Trump and Zelensky behind the scenes was somewhat tense. So it wasn't the same as it was last time in front of the cameras, but they still butt heads on a lot of issues. So it's, again, there's a lot of really fascinating drama playing out in all of this.
Okay, so yesterday Ukraine struck a Russian fuel processing plant. This is like their cash cow, right? They sell this fuel to countries like China. Do you think that Russia is finally feeling the financial pinch among other losses, and maybe that's another reason to talk to President Trump a second time around?
I think so. And what we've seen is that even if Russia can continue to gut this out for a while, they probably, experts are saying they probably have a year or so before they really start having pretty dramatic financial cost here, right? So Vladimir Putin is throwing tons of money into the military, tons of money into the economy. He's basically going into debt to finance this war. And you can only do that for so long. Now, he has calculated that he can withstand the United States, Europe, and Ukraine. So the question is, who can afford this conflict for the longest? And Putin's starting to show signs, but I think he believes he can outlast the United States, Ukraine, and the European Union.
Here's a question you may not be able to answer, but I want to ask it anyway. Public opinion of this war in Russia, are they just filled with propaganda? I mean, for the most part, are people there seeing through this, especially when the country is seeing financial strain?
There's a tremendous amount of propaganda going on, right? And then the other thing is, it's very difficult to speak out against Russia. So you may not really support the war, but if you share those opinions, somebody might come knocking at your door. And then the other factor is a whole bunch of people left, right? Fled Russia. So those who would be likely to push back are no longer there. And then the other thing is Vladimir Putin is spending so much money on the economy and on the military. So that has helped to tamp down some of that pushback. But yes, there is so much propaganda. They are shaping the airwaves and the narrative that the Russian public is seeing.
Professor Muck, thank you for your time. Have a great week.
Always good to be here.
Thank you.